Hey, what's going on? It's Kyle Henderson and Tony Sukalis. Today, we're talking about our BamaInsider.com top 40. This is our second video in the series. The players were rated based on their projected impact for the 2020 season. We start out today with number 35, and we'll jump right into it, talking about Jalyn Armour-Davis out of Mobile, Alabama. Now a redshirt sophomore, played in 8 games last season, and it looks like he could potentially be one of the key contributors on the defensive side at the corner position. What do you think about Armour-Davis, and what should we expect from him going into the 2020 season, Tony?
Yeah, I think he's a kid that could play either cornerback or the star position. I really, he's worked at that star position before. So if Alabama wants to keep Patrick Surtain and Josh Jobe as its cornerbacks, he's a guy that could really step into that position, and he's worked there. I think when you're looking at the secondary, and let's look at it as 3 different cornerback positions. Let's call the star position a cornerback position, right? So I think 2 of those are going to go to – obviously one's going to go to Patrick Surtain. The other one's going to probably go to Josh Jobe. So you got that last spot, and I think it's going to be between Jalyn Armour-Davis or Ronald Williams Jr., who's the JUCO player they brought in this year's class. So one of those 2 guys, I think the reason why I have Jalyn Armour-Davis where I have him is because I think I'm kind of leaning towards Ronald Williams to get that spot. That doesn't mean that he's definitely going to get it, though, and I think Jalyn Armour-Davis is a guy that really could factor in, maybe even land a starting spot.
Yeah, I think when you look at the corner position and when you look at star, if you throw that into the mix, I think those are position battles that we're going to be watching whenever Alabama starts to pick up with football. I mean, there's just a lot of competition, and there's a lot of guys that need to prove themselves. This, as you mentioned, the junior college transfer coming in. We need to see how good Josh Jobe is on the other side, Jalyn Armour-Davis. There's a lot of guys to sprinkle in, and we need to figure out where Patrick Surtain is going to play as well. So a lot of guys that you can mix in, but Jalyn Armour-Davis, certainly someone who looks and you would think is ready now, being a redshirt sophomore, to really contribute. We'll go down to number 34, and that's Miller Forrestall, a guy with a ton of experience coming back to the 2020 season. He's had some strange injuries. I mean, I guess the ACL isn't a strange injury, but the voice box was just never even heard or seen anything like that and at the college football level. And he returns with just a ton of experience, 6'5", 245 pounds, extremely high IQ, should provide a lot of leadership at that position.
Yeah, I mean, that voice box, that's a scary injury. I mean, for him to come back. But, it's encouraging that he came back, had 3 receptions in the Citrus Bowl, including a touchdown. It also kind of seemed that, he was vibing well with Mac Jones on the field. It seemed like, Mac Jones was looking down. And if you have a quarterback that's trying to break in, I know Mac's, got some experience now, but it's still nice to have a nice, sturdy tight end to throw to. It's usually a reassurance for a quarterback if you're trying to break them in. So whether it's Mac Jones or Bryce Young, nice to have that guy. When you look at Miller Forrestall, he's a guy that in the past, Nick Saban's compared to O.J. Howard. He hasn't really lived up to that potential. And, it's been weird because, he missed basically a full season with the ACL, and then he was playing behind Irv Smith. And then this year Alabama's offense really wasn't throwing the tight ends. He probably needs to improve a little bit on his blocking, but if you look at him, he's probably also the most complete tight end that Alabama has. So I think he'll definitely land that starting spot, and who knows, maybe he has a breakout year. Maybe, I think he's been a guy that we've kind of circled as having a breakout year, so this would be his last chance at it. And I think, he just from being a starter, I think he could probably factor in.
Yeah, I think when you talk about Miller Forrestall, number one, he's a veteran on this team. He has a lot of experience. He is the guy at the tight end position, and I think he's kind of like a sleepy, athletic type of a player. I think around the red zone, Alabama likes to get those guys sprinkled in. I've seen him make some great blocks downfield, and he's a big dude, 6'5", 245 pounds. So he's certainly the guy to come in, and he's a great spokesman for Alabama. It does when we interview him, I mean, super high IQ, and he's a great representation of the program, and I think he'll have a good season if he stays healthy. Number 33 in our top 40, we're moving down from 40 obviously to number 1. You can read the complete series on BamaInsider.com. This is a true freshman coming in, William Anderson, who was a 5-star, just a ton of accolades. He was at Atlanta Journal-Constitution Super 11, recording 22 sacks, rated as a 5-star on Rivals.com. Super high expectations for all these guys, but certainly really excited to see William Anderson.
Yeah, so a little spoiler alert here. Will Anderson, the only true freshman on this list that's higher than Will Anderson is Bryce Young.
Yeah.
And I think that, when you look at it, Will Anderson actually might be the freshman that makes the most impact. If Bryce Young isn't going to land that starting quarterback spot, I think Will Anderson could actually have a role in this defense. Perhaps he comes in just as a pass rusher on third downs, because it takes a while to learn the defense. And if he didn't have the spring, he's still probably got some ways to break into the defense. You can't just plug and play, and it's really hard to, at least in Alabama's defense. But he's a guy that gets after the pass rusher so well. It's hard to imagine him not getting on the field in some way or another. And I think when you look at Alabama's class coming in, he's probably the guy that you look as the most guaranteed to make an impact in some way or another.
Yeah, I think a lot has to do with the fact that Alabama needs outside linebackers to contribute, right? I mean, with the fact that Terrell Lewis has exited along with Anthony Jennings, you're going to need some guys to really step up at the position. Yeah, Chris Allen returns. You got a couple other guys who do have experience, but some of these freshmen are capable enough and should be able to make an impact. Of course, they missed out on spring football, and that's going to put them behind a little bit. But we're all curious to see just how talented William Anderson is when he gets to Alabama. And I think Alabama football fans obviously going to be very happy with, the product as of William Anderson's play as he develops in the program. Number 32, Shane Lee, and 6 foot, 246 pounds, now a sophomore, led all SEC freshman with 86 tackles, played every single game. He became a scapegoat along with Pete Golding towards the end of the season for pretty much everything wrong that went wrong with Alabama's defense. But this guy has a lot of experience, and he sure is a thumper at 250 pounds. What's your take on Shane Lee, and how do you kind of see him folding into the program in 2020?
Yeah, it's kind of weird that he was kind of put into a scapegoat by some Alabama fans, because if you look at his numbers, they were good. I mean, he had some bad performances, Well,
he got torched, but like you're going to talk about, I mean, he had almost 90 tackles.
Yeah, he got torched by like LSU, but who didn't get torched by LSU? The whole Alabama defense was destroyed by LSU. So I don't think that you could really, how many first-year players or freshmen, especially true freshmen, are going to perform better than Shane Lee did last year? The only reason why he's lower on this list is because Dylan Moses comes back, and I don't think he's going to have a starting job. I think Dylan Moses is obviously going to take that Mike linebacker position. I think probably Christian Harris is going to be the guy next to him. So I think Shane Lee's going to be on the field, and he'll play some, and he's definitely a great back. I mean, Alabama is so deep at the inside linebackers this year, so he'll provide depth and everything. But I think maybe this is a year where he could learn, from Dylan Moses and really kind of retake that Mike linebacker role when Moses leaves.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I mean, this is a point that Pete Golding talked about a lot during his press conference against Michigan, was the fact that Shane Lee and Christian Harris, those guys are out there checking and asking questions to each other throughout the season. Mm-hmm. And you got two freshmen like, hey, does this look good? And another freshman's like, yeah, I guess. Those guys have no experience. And they didn't get they weren't able to learn from Dylan Moses, who is pretty much a coach on the field. So I think you're right, Tony. I think he's going to gain a lot of experience this year. If he has to come off, he's going to play a significant amount of time just because he, had almost 90 tackles last year. How can you keep him off the field? Plus, the fact is he has a nose for the football. He's not the best in coverage, obviously. He's 250 pounds, but he gets his nose to the football. And we're definitely going to see lots of Shane Lee, I would imagine. And, still a quality player on this team. Number 31, and this will be our last player in this particular segment, Jahleel Billingsley is a tight end, 6'4", 230 pounds, played in 9 games last year, someone who I'm really excited about. I mean, every time I see this guy out, and he's a hybrid wide receiver tight end. Alabama needs a playmaker tight end, and this guy could certainly be it. What do you think about Billingsley, Tony?
Yeah, so it's interesting, his spot on this list. Obviously we're projecting Miller Forrestall to be a starter. I don't know if we're necessarily projecting Jahleel Billingsley to be a starter, but when you look at Alabama and their tight ends, yeah, they have a lot of experience. They actually have a lot of depth now, but they don't have that playmaker that Jahleel Billingsley is. He's the only one that they've got that's a true playmaker at that position. And so I think, if somebody's going to have a big year, he's got a ton of potential. I put him at this spot at 31 because of his potential, because he could be the closest thing Alabama has to another Irv Smith type guy. And when you look at Alabama's roster, receiver wise, there's only two guys, Tyrell Shavers and then true freshman Trayshawn Holden. By the way, both have one combined reception to their name, over 6'3". So there's only two big receivers Alabama has, and they don't really have that much experience either. So if you got a guy like Jahleel Billingsley, maybe you utilize him as a receiving tight end, and really take advantage of mismatches in the slot and maybe in the red zone. Like we were talking about with Forrestal, I think he could be a real big option because they just don't have that with the receivers, at least from an experience standpoint. So if a Tyrell Shavers doesn't work out, then who's the big guy you're going to throw to? It really could be Jahleel Billingsley.
Yeah, the times that I've seen Billingsley, really impressed with his route running ability, great hands, and the size, as you talked about. So I think he's a hybrid type guy that I'm really excited to see his growth as he continues the program. But, as we continue to knock down our top 40, be sure and like and subscribe, read the content on BamaInsider.com. Tons of great coverage, tons of great recruiting coverage as we move through the summertime. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure and catch our next video, probably recruiting-wise, dropping right here on our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. For Tony Sakalis and Kyle Henderson, both of BamaInsider.com. We'll talk to you soon.